paths there. One of our #1 draws in any of our parks is hiking trails, so people will be able to get in to hike. And it just a locale with an entrance right off of State Route 44. You know, we see with some of our parks like Clarendon Woodlands, like Orchard Hills, there's a draw just because of the locale and ease of accessibility.
And do you foresee this being open to the public, accessibility-wise, within the next year?
We do. It's turnkey. You know, we'll have some work to do on coming back to you with a proposed name and an entry sign, but we do. There's no reason people can't start walking the cart paths.
And the proposed name of it will get a synopsis of how that came about and what reason. Great.
What about the banquet facilities? Any thoughts? What are your recommendations regarding the going forward on the banquet facility?
My vision and my proposal for it is to develop either a request for qualifications and or request for proposal for perhaps a farm to table type restaurant. So we would lease to a restaurateur, or that would be my hope for that facility. Under the last owner, there were a decent amount of bookings, but I think it could be more than that.
Have you talked to any of the, I mean, when the Pad Parks or Cleveland Metro Parks comes to mind with their restaurant at the place on Cedar Road. Is that Vacation?
Vacation.
Okay. Then I know Manakiki, they have a restaurant. I would imagine on some of the west side facility parks, they probably have facilities on the east side, so I don't get to that side of town very often. You know, we've been to functions at Pine Ridge. These are all, now that's Lake Metro Parks versus Cleveland Metro Parks. So have you spoken to your colleagues in those respective parks regarding how they've managed to do that?
I have. I've talked with both the executive director of Lake Metro Parks and the executive director of Cleveland Metro Parks. In the case of Cleveland, they've put me in touch with their planning staff so we can begin looking at a template and ideas for RFP or RFQ for a restaurant.
I love this park. I do. I love this park tremendously, and I'm very, very excited, and I hope that it goes through because I think it's a huge asset.
Paul may recall that we sent our biologists out to score each and every property we are considering, and since I've been director in 2014, it's scored in the top. I know it's scored in the top 10. So
yeah,
it's scored well.
I have to look at my report from several months ago. I don't remember exactly where it placed, but it was fairly high scoring piece of property.
So assuming we proceed, assuming that this becomes a park within our park system relatively soon, how quickly will the team get out there and begin not only analyzing potential use of the facilities, but also analyzing how much time it will take from really the minute we take over the property to initiating some overall renovation, reclamation, so forth, and to then long-term, what do you see for such a property? I mean, you got 18 holes, so it's a lot of work. I mean, what's our?
So,
and I'm not going to hold you to this today.
Timeline.
I just need for my own edification and the community that what we're anticipating.
So typically, once we would take ownership of it, one of the first things we would look at doing is Paul typically does a natural resource management plan. So I would say that would be something early going into, sometime in 2019 we'd get that rolling. He'd work on the management plan. Once the management plan is complete, then it starts to move more into, from a planning standpoint, we'll start to develop an overall master plan. If we're going with a restoration kind of approach, developing what that overall master plan looks like. And then depending on, as we move more towards actual improvements to the park property through restoration, that's where grant funding opportunities, all those things, applying for those, doing all that kind of due diligence with that. And so realistically, probably the earliest we would start to do sort of major improvements would be, I'd say probably 2021 knowing that in 19 and 20, we're kind of working through that design and kind of phase of things.
Knowing what happens to a golf course when you stop, or actually seeing what happens to a golf course when you stop maintaining it, and dealing with invasive species and so forth, and the thistle and everything like that.
So from an operational standpoint, so when we worked on Orchard Hills, right after we acquired it, it was open up to the public to use the trails, which I would assume would be kind of the same approach we'd use here. At Orchard Hills, we actually, I think, took the approach of kind of letting things go, and there are some lessons learned there as far as we do need to have our land stewards involved early on. We will be, treating invasives. Also, even with some of the mowing, with restoration efforts, we do maybe want to maintain a little bit more, even if it's brush hogging a few times a season to keep things cut back, because we ran into some issues where if you just kind of leave it unchecked. So 2019, all the way until we start to get into major restoration efforts internally with our operations and land stewards, we would be doing maintenance to maintain things so they don't get away from us, because that would just lead to probably additional costs at the restoration end of things.
As far as the irrigation systems that you find that throughout these, do you just abandon in place, or do you remove them?
Well, the irrigation, we would typically abandon for the drain tile, because golf courses have a ton of drain tile. The approach we took at Orchard Hills was actually we went through and kind of crushed drain tile and then start to let the water kind of go back to its sort of natural sort of
Yeah, I think it'd be
hydrology.
pretty appropriate to kind of look at where over the winter time and early spring, kind of what kind of water flow goes through this piece of property, map all that, wetland restoration potential, stream restoration potential, and then think about, crushing tiles, getting rid of irrigation.
I'm assuming because of the age of this golf course that it's clay, not PVC.
What we found at Orchard Hills, it's everything, because every year, if there's a wet spot on a fairway or green, they go in and throw in some drain tile. So yeah, you get into kind of everything from clay through
I
PVC.
guess that would make sense. At Orchard Hill, did you find predominantly clay tile, or was it really?
There were, but no, again, yeah, it was a mix of patch of everything over years and years of work.
I propose a motion that we proceed with the purchase of the property known as Wicked Woods from the West Clarendon and Wicked Woods LLC. It's an Ohio Limited Liability Company. That would include the property, the facilities on the property, and the tangible personal property associated with this property, and all associated liquor permits and licenses that are included. Oh, I didn't see between Wicked Woods Banquet LLC and Ohio Limited, no, right, so you got, sorry, I was reading down further, Wicked Woods Banquet LLC, thank you, Jackie. West Clarendon Wicked LLC. That's it? Right. And then us.
So we have the motion on the table for discussion. Can we simply just amend that motion to Andre's point?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, so go ahead and call a vote to purchase the Wicked Woods property as stated by Mr. Bates.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
And Mrs. DeTore.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Because
You need to sign all four of them on page 25.
No.
Right. These are valuable.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. That you guys can keep for ceremony.
It's worth mentioning, we did appropriate the money in preparation for this acquisition, and so now that we have a signed purchase and sale agreement, we will contact our auditor and work to encumber the money. So our goal was to close before the end of the year.
Thank you.